Hello and welcome to The Pulse. I'm Ron Roberson. My very special guest today is Pete Whalon. He's the author of the book, The Saigon Zoo. It's a look into the war in Vietnam and his work in it. Pete, welcome.
Thank you, Ron. Good to see you again. We're old friends. So,
yes, indeed. Good to see you as well. And I tell you, I've read the book, and I find it fascinating, some of the things that you talk about. And it's sort of a different look into the war in Vietnam. Yeah,
I actually had a unique experience. In fact, most people, when I first tell them, they kind of stop and go, what? I was a lifeguard at a swimming pool in Vietnam at Long Binh, which was the biggest military base there. And most people don't even realize they had swimming pools there. Mm-hmm. And on Long Binh, they had actually 12 above-ground pools. Yeah. So, yeah, a little different than what you expect.
Yeah. So, so I'm to believe that while everybody else is dodging bullets and sunken foxholes, you were at the swimming pool.
I was at the swimming pool. In fact, when I talk to combat vets, at first, a lot of them are kind of like, you know what? And I go, hey, I didn't go to Canada. I didn't dodge the draft. I just got lucky. But, you know, a lot of people don't realize in all wars, for every combat troop, there's at least 6, 7, or 8 non-combat people, you know, cooks, supply, that type of thing. Of course, not too many lifeguards. So.
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating to find out all the different positions that people held during the war, and some are very unique. Now, what prompted you to want to write this book?
Well, you know, when I first got out, I would tell people I was a lifeguard, and they go, what are you talking about? And I'd start telling some of my stories, and after a while, a couple of my friends said, God, you got a lot of great stories. You ought to write a book. That was back in the 70s. Mm-hmm. Well, in the late 80s, I started the book. I thought, maybe I'll try it. I didn't know if I'd ever published it, and I finished it and published it. So anyway, the Saigon Zoo, it's called Vietnam's Other Wars, Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing, a lot of drugs in Vietnam.
Yes, yeah.
Anybody that was there will tell you that, whether combat or non-combat.
Yeah.
And
now tell us how your book differs from other books that have been written about Vietnam.
Yeah, mine is the only one except for Good Morning Vietnam, which they made a movie out of. The only one I know that's actually a humorous book. It's a funny book, and I actually am one of the few people you'll ever meet that I had a good time in Vietnam. In fact, I was working at the pool when my 12 months was up. I extended for another 10 months. Wow. So I was actually there 22 months because my job was so easy and actually a lot of fun. Yeah.
You really go into, and you mentioned earlier that you get into drug usage and that type of thing. That was pretty big and prominent, probably more of a survival mechanism than anything else. Why did you choose to go into the drug aspect of things?
Well, you know, it was so big there. You had a lot of 18, 19, 20-year-olds coming over there. We're talking late 60s when the drug epidemic explosion really hit. Mm-hmm. And over there, you could get, I don't know if you remember the old Ritz cracker cans that were like this big. You could get a Ritz cracker can full of grass, marijuana, for $10. Mm-hmm. But they had, I mean, heroin, that was the big one. A lot of heroin addicts came back from Vietnam. Mm-hmm. Speed, uppers, downers, I mean, just every drug imaginable. And the price was so cheap. Cocaine, you know, and it was a big, big problem there. Right. And the government didn't know how to handle it. They had no clue how to handle, you know, drugged out GIs.
Yeah. And how did that affect the day-to-day activities of those that were up on the front lines? Being under the influence like that?
Yeah, when you talk to combat vets, you know, a lot of them were really down on the guys that did drugs because they're out on patrol in the jungle, and you don't want to be relying on a heroin addict to, you know, save your butt. Right. Or sitting around a pool, not much to worry about. Didn't have to save too many people because our pool was only 4 feet deep. So, you know, our big joke was, you know, when we train new lifeguards, we'd say, okay, here's the only rule. If someone goes down, you just yell, stand up, stupid. That was basically all you needed to know. But the drugs were really frowned upon by the grunts, the guys in the field. Right. You know, even though a lot of them still did drugs.
Yeah. You entitled the book The Saigon Zoo. Yeah. How much of a zoo was it?
It's a big zoo. I mean, you had, like I said, again, the drugs, plus you had a lot of people that drank, you know. And so at night, when you were in a company area, there was a line that the lifers, the sergeants, wouldn't cross at night. They would never go below. Where they lived was up above. Most of them were built on downward streets. They would never walk after dark below there. They were afraid of the guys because you got the guys with guns and grenades sitting around smoking dope and drinking, you know, and yeah, they were deathly afraid of a lot of the GIs.
It's a fascinating look, and it takes you beyond what most of us have really thought about the Vietnam War and some of the participants thereof. Is the book solely about Vietnam veterans?
Yeah, it starts, actually, my book starts, it's basically a memoir. It starts on the day that I went to the recruiter's office in Inglewood and got tricked into joining, literally tricked into joining. And it ends on the day that I was flying home, March 31st, 71, getting out of the Army. So it covers strictly from day one to the end of my tour. And it's strictly about that. But the one thing I like to tell people, it's not a book you would think is written for GIs or Vietnam veterans. I did it in style. It's a very easy read. Even a lot of women like it. It's more of a comedy humorous book. You don't have to know military jargon. You don't have to understand the military to get a kick out of this. I kind of related to MASH, which was the Korean War, only of course they were doctors. Relate this kind of like a MASH situation.
Yes,
so,
indeed. What do you hope the reader takes away from this book?
You know, they're gonna, I mean, it's not like they're gonna learn a lot. They're definitely gonna learn a lot about what the guys not fighting the war were doing, the crazy, crazy stuff that went on there, and a lot of the repercussions from drug use. But again, a lot of humorous stuff. At the pool, when we closed at 8 o'clock at night, that's when the fun really started. I mean, we left the lights on. We were there until 2, 3 in the morning. All the crazies came down to the pool and partied all night, and then we opened up the next morning and did it again.
Yeah. How do we get a hold of you, Pete?
I have a website. It's saigonzoo.com, and email is pete@saigonzoo.com. And I'm more than willing to answer any questions. If you want to buy a copy of my book, if you buy it from me, you'll get it at a better price, and I'll also sign it. So anyway, yeah, Saigon Zoo, Vietnam's Other War, Sex, Drugs, Rock and Roll. It's all over Amazon. All the sites carry it. So it's easy to find. If you type in Saigon Zoo, Vietnam's Other War, it'll pop up everywhere.
Great.
And I guarantee you'll get a lot of laughs out of it. I tell people, if you don't laugh out loud in the first chapter, then go ahead and put it down. Anyway.
And it's a good book. I've read it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Very well done. And I have my autographed copy.
That's
so
right.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Thank you so much for joining us, and continued success.
Thank you. Great to see you again, Ron.
Thank you. Good to see you as well.
Okay.
Pete Whalon, my guest. He's the author of The Saigon Zoo, available on Amazon and other book outlets. Go on out and secure yourself a copy. I'm Ron Roberson. This is The Pulse.